Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 58. Our Patreon Ruby has selected the Matt Fraction run on Hawkeye. Thank you, Ruby.
Much appreciated.
Any opportunity I have to revisit this run is a good... I don't really need much of a reason, but getting to pour back over this is just absolutely fantastic.
So this is how ignorant I am. I read this when it was coming out originally, and I honestly didn't realize it was a thing. I enjoyed it, definitely enjoyed it, but I did see that people have done these reviews of it and how great it was, and I'm like, wow, I'm glad that people share my opinion, I guess.
Yeah, it's just, if you haven't had an opportunity to read it, I urge you, go out, find the trade paperbacks, go on Marvel Unlimited, please read it. I think it's 23 or 24 issues, written by Matt Fraction. The art is mostly David Aja with bits and pieces of Annie Wu. Annie Wu mostly takes over once Kate Bishop is in LA. Then there's a sort of almost a bi-monthly thing where 1 month it'll be focused on Clint in Queens, and the next month it'll be focused on Kate in Los Angeles. And the art style shifts because Annie does all of the Kate stuff and David does all of the Clint stuff. There's also some work in there by Francisco Francavilla and Javier Pulido, who I mentioned during the She-Hulk episode that I was a big fan of his style as well. So the artwork all around is just absolutely amazing. And for those of you who are big fans of the run, it's going to be adapted a bit for the Disney Plus series that's going to be coming out in a couple of years that they've announced is going to be Jeremy Renner, and they are looking to find an actress to play Kate Bishop. I think at last I heard, Haley Steinfeld was rumored to be playing Kate. But my question is just, I'm curious how they're going to do that when the Hawkeye in the MCU is very different from the Hawkeye in the comics. Yeah. So you can get away with it in the comics based on his history. How you're going to get Jeremy Renner to play. Not that I'm saying Jeremy Renner couldn't do a good job with the material. I just think character-wise, the shift is going to be huge. Going from the Hawkeye, the family man that we see in the MCU with Linda Cardinale and everybody and his family and the kids and everything. Now he's living the bachelor life in a rundown apartment in Bed-Stuy. It doesn't. I'd be curious to see how they pull it off. That's all I'm going to say. So before we get started, weekly shout out. This week we're giving our plug for The Struggle Bus. This is a bi-weekly advice podcast hosted by Katharine and Sally. They answer questions. They offer opinions. It's mental health without judgment is the best way I can describe it. It's a very interesting listen because they make no bones about the fact that although, they have some knowledge, they're not preaching. This is just more, we want to talk to you and we want to listen to your questions and offer advice where we can, because very similar to what we do, it's about destigmatizing all of the problems that we all face. And so when I found out about this particular podcast, I said, I definitely have to give these ladies a shout out. So you can find their show at strugglebuspodcast.com and basically wherever you find podcasts. And Podcoin is no longer a thing now. So.
Oh, well. At least it lasted as long as most other cryptocurrencies, I guess. I don't know.
I wouldn't call it a cryptocurrency, but I mean,
well,
it didn't even last as long as Dogecoin, but I digress. So we're, because we are focusing strictly on the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye, we're not going to get too into the weeds on his background and his full-length history. The only things I'm going to explain to you are the points in his background that are really germane to this particular run. So just as way of background, Hawkeye, a.k.a. Clint Barton, was created by Stan Lee and Don Heck in Tales of Suspense number 57, September 1964. He was orphaned as a young boy. He and his brother Barney joined the circus. He grew up as a circus performer with incredible aim with projectiles, particularly a bow and arrow. He used his skills initially as a thief before reforming and becoming an Avenger. And then he met, fell in love with, and marries Bobbi Morse, a.k.a. Mockingbird, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned Avenger. And during their marriage, he was rendered mostly deaf after use of a sonic weapon was used to defeat Crossfire. So his marriage became strained, as many superhero relationships often do, and they break up. And at one point, he begins dating Jessica Drew, a.k.a. Spider-Woman. So that's just, I'm really just sort of hitting the highlights there to give you the overall background on Hawkeye and Clint before we get into the Matt Fraction run. So as the series begins, he actually starts off in the hospital, and then he returns to an apartment in Bed-Stuy, New York City, Queens. The apartment building is under assault by the Russian mob, and he and Kate Bishop, who's also Hawkeye because she took the moniker while he was dead, and that's a whole other thing we're not really going to get into.
Thank God.
Clint was dead for a while, I'll also just put it that way, and then Kate Bishop was one of the young Avengers, and she began using a bow and arrow and calling herself Hawkeye, and then Clint came back to life, but she's still calling herself Hawkeye, so they have I don't want to say it's a fully mentor-mentee relationship, but I love the dynamic where Kate is like, you're messed up, but I'm also messed up. And there's that one great scene, and it's not really like a spoiler, but we can address it a little bit in the issues. The one great sequence where they're in the limo and she says to him, together, you and me make one good person.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And I thought that was just such a beautiful way of writing that, and just a perfect explanation of their dynamic. But in any case, so they team up and they're defending the building and its tenants. Clint buys the building and becomes sort of the de facto superintendent, but he realizes this is much bigger than one building, that the Russian mob is attempting to take over basically the entire block in an effort to raise it all to the ground and put this new development in. And this one apartment building is the thorn in their side that they can't buy out. And so it becomes Clint and Kate versus the Russian mob, except Clint begins regretting taking on all the responsibility, and he realizes that no one else is going to do it. And despite his repeated assurances that he can do it alone, he needs help. Unfortunately, his attitude drives Kate away to Los Angeles, and she took Lucky, the pizza dog, with her. And that issue all about Lucky is fantastic because he rescues Lucky from a beatdown by the Russian mob in the first issue.
I know I don't talk typically about the actual style of a comic itself, but the minimalism, not just in the artwork, but in the sparse use of language in that particular comic, is really cool. It's refreshing. The idea that you don't have to fill pages with words to get exposition. You know what's going on pretty quickly, and getting to see it from a quote-unquote non-human's eye view, it's really awesome.
Yeah, the entire issue, I think it's issue 11 or 12, is written from Lucky's point of view. So Lucky is helping to figure out who committed a murder on the rooftop, and he gets involved. And so when Kate leaves for LA, she takes Lucky with her, and then those issues are drawn by the fantastic Annie Wu. I love her style. I love David Aja's style, but Annie Wu has a realism to her. It's just that the way that she draws faces, I think her expressions are incredibly clear. And I don't recall off the top of my head who did the colors, but just the entire palette that they use in LA is fantastic. And so she ends up dealing with Madame Mask, who, aka Whitney Frost, who, if you watched Agent Carter, was a villain in season 2, I think. So I like Madame Mask as a character. I think she's fascinating. So then Clint's brother Barney shows up to help Clint, and he takes a beating that's intended for Clint before stealing basically a ton of cash from him and leaving. And Clint's like, damn you, Barney. Because Barney at one point was a villain, and he's always been sort of a rogue. And Clint loves his older brother, but he doesn't fully trust him.
Oh, I wonder why.
And it's because Barney does stuff like, I don't know, take all the money and then run. So in the end, the good guys win, but there is a cost. And again, I'm going to just say that if you haven't read it, I strongly urge you, go out, find the digital copies, find the trades, and, find it on Comixology, Marvel Unlimited, Amazon, what have you. Read these issues because Matt Fraction and company won Eisner Awards for this. All of the accolades on this run were so incredibly well deserved that I cannot push this. This to me was on the level, and this is, I'm sure you're going to get where I'm coming from with this. My recommendations for this are on a level with basically anything written by Tom King.
All right.
So when we rave, about The Vision and Mr. Miracle and those Tom King books, this is up there with that.
You're much better than I am when it comes to identifying certain authors and artists and things like that. And I'll admit, my knowledge becomes incredibly limited in scope. But I will say the fact that when this run was mentioned, I didn't immediately put together Fraction. I'm like, huh? Did I read that? And I'm go back and see it. And I'm like, oh, I did. And I really enjoyed it. So that says a lot. I didn't, like I said before, I didn't know that this was a thing, but I'm really glad it is.
Yeah. Like I said, there's an entire issue written from the point of view of Pizza Dog. There's an entire issue where Clint is dealing with his hearing loss. And so majority of his dialogue is actually in sign language and it's not captioned. And yet the signs are illustrated in a way that you understand most of what is being said. And it's a conversation mostly between Clint and Barney because Barney understands sign language, being Clint's brother. And so it's just, like I said, the whole thing is just very well done. And the way that they take normal superhero tropes and comic book tropes and turn them on their head is very well done for this book. So the first issue we'll get into is the fact that Clint has a very lone wolf mindset, and it gets him into trouble because he feels that he doesn't need anybody else. He can do it all on his own. The one issue, it's in the late teens, early 20s, where it's written or it's drawn by Chris Iliopoulos in the style of the Holiday Friends, and they're all animals because it's supposed to be cartoony. He falls asleep watching a non-denominational holiday special, and so all of the characters in this non-denominational holiday special become, in his subconscious, he and his friends. And the dog that represents Clint keeps saying, I don't need anybody's help. I don't need anybody's help. I can do it all by myself.
Right.
And as we've seen, dozens of times in our episodes and in our discussions, you can't do it all by yourself. And there is no shame in asking for help. But Clint doesn't realize that, and it gets him in trouble.
Well, that's well said.
I mean, I don't know how else to put it, other than the fact that, Kate, he drives Kate away. His ex-wife, Bobbi, shows up and she's annoyed with him. His quote unquote work wife, Black Widow, shows up and she's annoyed with him. He's dating Jessica Drew in the beginning of this series, and then he drives her away, mostly because he sleeps with another woman, but also just by the fact that all of them say, you push everyone away from you.
Yeah.
Why do you do this?
This is going to take an interesting turn because this is actually something that I myself have had to deal with. I'm not even saying that as a consideration for other patients. I'm saying as a consideration for myself. When we're talking about Clint as a hero, he is well aware of the level of responsibility that requires. And more importantly, he's aware of what society expects from an adult. You're not supposed to be a burden to anyone. And many times, a person who's a lone wolf, their first job is don't screw up. Don't become someone that needs to be taken care of on a regular basis. And there's such a fear of helplessness, or correction, there is a fear of developing helplessness that you'll lose your identity. So anything that pushes as far away from that spectrum as you can get, that's going to be considered a positive, even if it's to the detriment of social interaction. So often people like this become task-oriented. And what I mean by that is they may have a checklist of things that they want to do, or they may have one overarching goal that will be put at the forefront before talking about anything else. And that includes their own emotions, that includes their own physical well-being at times. It can get to that level at extremes. In a healthier setting, it's a person that may tend to drift from other people if there are situations where they think they have a good answer and nobody else is listening to them, but they'll still look for some level of feedback from others. The question, of course, becomes, even when they get that feedback, are they actually going to take it? Or are they just superficially saying, yes, I understand, thank you for the notice, and then don't do anything different than what they were planning on in the first place? There can be a certain level of narcissism that comes along with this, but there is a different variation that includes the opposite, that the person has developed a sense of humility, that they recognize they're not perfect and may develop more of the imposter syndrome side of things. Like, I don't want anybody to know exactly how I'm doing things, because if they find out, they're probably going to point out all the flaws and how screwed up I really am. So if I do all this by myself, and the other part of this, keep it hidden, sometimes lone wolves will try and hide their tracks, because that way it's uniquely theirs. If we're talking from a narcissistic point of view, it'll be they'll get all the spoils and no one else can do that again. If we're talking, once again, from the fear of either being rejected or just failing, then they know that they don't have to endure that level of scrutiny and ridicule. So either way, on either extreme, you're going to end up with significant social problems, because this may sound scary to the lone wolves out there. People want to interact with you. People want to know you, and they want to know your flaws. And they're not usually doing it in a condescending way. And they're not doing it in a threatening way if you think you're that good. Sometimes they just want to give you that round of applause. So those things can become foreign, because it becomes just this cycle that perpetuates itself. You become more isolated because that seems to, quote unquote, work for you. And then other people push you away further because they don't want to deal with you being a jerk. And then you say, well, see, people were a jerk in the first place, so I'm not going to try. And we just keep going down that path. It's unfortunate if no one intervenes, not necessarily because they don't want to, but because they don't know how. Here's a tip. If you're trying to deal with someone that's pushing people away or appear to be trying to push people away, proximity is more powerful than you think. In other words, you don't have to be the person that points in their face and say, you need to change. You can simply be that person that's right next to them saying, hey, man, whatever it is you're doing is cool. I'm not even paying attention, but I'm here with you. So sometimes leaving that door open can make a big difference. With someone like Clint, main thing is don't mess up his shot.
Yeah, that is a very important thing. Don't make him miss. That's interesting. And like I said, because Clint in particular, I think he feels, and this is sort of getting into, I guess I'll jump to number 3 then. He feels guilt over his place in superhero-dom because Clint is a regular guy, and yet he's on the team with guys like Thor and the Hulk and Captain America, and at one point was leader of the West Coast Avengers, and he led the Secret Avengers prior to this. Yeah. He always manages to end up in a place of leadership despite the fact that he doesn't have any quote-unquote superpowers. And I think he feels guilty over that because that's all that he can do, he wants to do more, and he feels guilty that he can't do more. But it's this struggle, because he wants to be the good guy and he feels compelled and he can't walk away, even though he doesn't know how much he can really do. But he's like, fine. There's this begrudging thought process that goes on. And because of that, he feels guilty a lot. That's something that's we don't see that often. And I think it's very unique. I would say to Clint in particular in this run, because I would say overall, we don't see that too much historically with Clint. But in this run in particular, I think it's very pronounced based on the way that Matt Fraction wanted to write him.
Right. The fact that, in my opinion, this run was written for the reason we all got into comics. Yes, we all think about having superpowers, flight, telepathy, strength, all that stuff. But what is it really? It's more like we want to be in situations where we can make a difference. We can have an impact on society at large with who we are. And Clint does that. And he does it in a way, at least the way it's written here, that we, I think as a whole, can relate to, where you don't have everything perfect or something above and beyond what we would expect to be real to deal with these situations. What are the resources you have? Able to get some money? I'll use that. I have great abilities with weapons? I'll use that. I can fight a little bit? I'll use that. I'm witty? I'm charming? Go with that. Pretty smart tactician? Add that to the mix. I think I've mentioned it in other episodes where it's not whether or not you're number one in one category. It's when you take being the top 10 or 20% in multiple areas and you put it together. I've mentioned Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy. He calls it, I said the aggregation of marginal gains. That's the way I put it in my head, but he calls it the talent stack. When you put multiple things together that may or may not sound like they go together, it makes you unique and it makes you the type of prospect or commodity in a certain field that no one else can match. And ultimately, that's going to show some positive results. That's what Clint has. And that's what other people recognize. I love the term je ne sais quoi because that's exactly it. You don't have to know exactly what it is that makes that person unique, but when you recognize it, you reward it. And you mentioned the fact that he's been a leader of different people. To equate it to more our general lives, when you're offered a situation of being in either a committee or being a part of leadership in some way for an organization that deep down you're wondering, how on earth did I get here? And I know usually Anthony is the one that does a lot of the introspection and how this applies to him. I'm turning this episode, for whatever reason, not intentionally, I'm turning it the other way because I'm in a similar situation where I wonder, how on earth am I getting what I'm getting? I'm not going to give too many details, but the point is I'm taking on a role that is pretty important, and it's one that I look forward to. It's also one that admittedly scares the heck out of me because I see the people that have taken this role before and I see the credentials that they had, and mine aren't exactly the same. And yet, because of the people I know, because of my interactions with them and my demonstration of compassion and I guess some of my skills or whatnot, and yes, this is truly me, I do become self-deprecating about a lot of things, but it made me realize it doesn't matter. For whatever reason, when other people are able to see something that's positive in you, it's not your job to shadow that and feel inadequate. It's your job to affirm it. You have to make sure you're putting your best face forward and saying, with good faith and effort, I will do my best to live up to what you think of me. It's an opportunity. It's not a burden. And thus the difference in how someone manages those situations can lead to either depression and anxiety or increased life satisfaction. I'm not saying that it's a switch that you flip on and off, but I am saying that is something that can become part of your conscience as opposed to reverting to what most people would consider to be primal fight or flight responses. So for someone like Clint, he may have those thoughts of, I don't have what Thor has, either from a superpower ability or the hammer itself or whatever. And I may not be Captain America and I didn't get a super soldier serum or whatever. But I am Clint. And those guys saw something in me. So for people like that to recognize it and acknowledge it, and then to be put in other situations where other people acknowledged it, and you keep getting this feedback over and over again, I'm not saying that people are giving you the perfect responses, but they're giving you valuable responses and something that should be acknowledged. And like I said, kind of lean in instead of leaning out. So I'm going to try and follow my own advice for the next several months and hopefully years.
Very well said. And it's interesting being on the other side of that, because normally I'm the one, as you said, who takes it and turns the eye inward. And this is a rare opportunity for you to do that. So it's fascinating. And you and I had that discussion offline last weekend about this opportunity and what this meant to you and what it would mean for you personally, professionally, et cetera.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to hear that take on it and for you to combine it with Clint, who I do think, is in a way, in as much as Clint, and especially in this run, is written to be sort of just fumbling his way through things, he makes the effort and he always does try. Even if he begrudgingly does it, he still tries. And I think that from that standpoint is something that we should all aspire to, that no matter what, we all make the effort, regardless of how well we think it's going to go. And I know the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but more often than not, at least in most circumstances,
but the road to heaven is paved with fantastic effort.
Well, yeah, that's fair. But my point was just going to be that I think your average person, by and large, if they understand that your intentions were good, will be willing to give you a bit of a pass if you screw up a little bit because you tried and you meant well. At least for me personally, I know that I may get frustrated. I may get annoyed if somebody does something and they mean well, but I'm not going to get as agitated or upset with them. Whereas if they either didn't try or they had bad intentions, well, now that's malice. I'm willing to overlook negligence. It's negligence versus malice, essentially, is what it boils down to. And I think folks are generally much more willing to forgive negligence than malice, because they understand, at least if your intentions were pure or at least good. And I think Clint's heart is in the right place. So the last issue, and this is sort of all ties in with that, is he gives people chances even if it comes back to bite him. And we see that with Penny and his repeated interactions with her, Darlene Wright, whatever her real name is, that, there's this woman and she sweet talks him and they end up sleeping together. And then he's really interested in the car at first. He's like, this beautiful woman driving this fantastic sports car. You intrigue me. And then her interactions with Clint is what really kicks off a lot of the story, because she is tied in with the Russian mob and all of that. And that's really where he gets into all of this, because it's a combination of all the stuff with Penny and then the stuff with the apartment building. And then there's the fantastic issue where it's all about the women in his life. And you've got the ex-wife, the work wife, and the girlfriend. And then there's Penny. And so I just like the way that he's written with that he keeps giving people chances, even if it comes back to bite him, because again, it comes back to his good heart. And we see that a lot with Kate, that even though their relationship isn't always perfect, that she's another one that she gives him chances after chances after chances. And it really, it takes a lot for her to leave him, but then at the end she comes back.
Right.
So she can't. Clint is not the kind of guy that you give up on completely. You may walk away from him, you may get annoyed with him, but you come back to him, and vice versa, that Clint may get annoyed and he may take a few steps back, but he won't abandon you. And even his brother, we see that's another example with Barney, who, tried to kill him at numerous times. Yep. And yet shows up and, can you spare some change for a poor fella down on his luck, which is a reference to the Bugs Bunny cartoon from the 40s. And, Humphrey Bogart impression. So that's another part of it. So what drives a person, I guess, as someone who has bent over backwards and given people chance after chance after chance? Maybe you can tell me what's wrong with me.
Oh, God.
Or what's wrong with Clint.
I think that's the first time you've actually said something that blunt about, like, this type of situation.
Okay, so maybe it's not what's wrong with me, but what leads a person to be so forgiving and giving opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, even if it burns them?
I think it goes further than an individual psychological makeup. I think it almost boils down to a personal philosophy. How do you view the world? Do you view the world as a place where everything is predetermined and your role is to be a cog in the wheel? Or do you view the world as open, undetermined, and you have the ability to influence it. Once again, depending on ego, you may think you can influence it. You can influence everything, or you can influence small amounts. Either way, my point is it's that latter version of the world that will allow you to have a shifting dynamic with people. I'm not saying it's good or bad. If someone is abusive towards you and actually creates harm for you and those around you, then it usually is the best idea to be away from that person or find a way for that person to no longer be in your circle or maybe out of society at large and be incarcerated. But in any case, that's one way. If we're short of that and it's more a matter of annoyances or frustrations or just differences in political parties, as an example, none of this, in my opinion, and maybe I'll get feedback otherwise, is an absolute deal breaker in and of itself. And therefore, it's fair, in my opinion, to say that there is no one trait of a person that makes them unlovable. So for someone like Clint, with his own foibles, his own flaws, he's able to recognize that fairly well in others. And there's a certain level of grace that's necessary to allow people to be themselves and demonstrate those quirks that may or may not be positive or negative. Yes, they may be annoying, but once again, annoyance is usually on the side of the person experiencing the annoyance, not the person doing the annoying. In other words, if I'm a troll, by all means, get me out of your life. I'm purposely trying to antagonize you. But if I'm doing something that I think is germane to who I am as a person, and it creates a level of discomfort in you, but it can be demonstrated that it's not creating the same discomfort in other people that may be in a similar situation, then once again, that's a self-examination, not an examination of the person annoying you. The fact that Clint, even if it's subconsciously, is able to recognize that, it allows him to be flexible with the people around him and create the type of mindset that he's going to continue to go back to at least one moment or one point that he knows why he created this connection with the person in the first place. And if that impetus is still there after other occasions, then who's to say that it can't return in some other format? And through the comic run, it is shown. And you made a great example with Barney. There is zero reason for anybody that knows anything about their history to say, Clint, I know my thought was, what are you doing? Come on, man. This is going to end badly. It always does. You know it. And yet, there was a pretty good result. Temporary, but good result. Dealing with his brother. The fact that he had that one good result in the midst of all the chaos and a different negative result afterwards, he doesn't let those things negate. As I've said in numerous episodes at this point, he's not keeping a score sheet. He's not keeping a spreadsheet of all of this stuff that's happening. Because doing that, you would start, I hate to say it this way, you would start ranking people. You would put a number on their forehead. And that's not humane. That's not how you build relationships. At least not healthy relationships.
Yeah, I was going to say not healthy.
Right. So I give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. And I'm not even claiming that I agree with some of the decisions he's made with who he's hung out with. But I'd rather someone have that mindset and tighten it up a bit so that they don't get as hurt in the long run, as opposed to someone who is, I know we called him a lone wolf earlier, but someone who's a lockbox in terms of when other people reach out to them. Clint, unfortunately, has it one way, but not the other. He has no problem really with people reaching out to him and putting himself on the line. But when he needs to reach out to others, he shuts it down. So at some point, hopefully he's able to find a better balance.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's a big part of it, is that he gives and gives and gives, but he doesn't want to ask for help. And then he takes on so much, and then he he complains that he's tired or he gets frustrated and such. And it is shown to him by many allies throughout the run that if you just ask for help, you'd be a lot less stressed and things would go a lot easier for you. But because you're so hell-bent on going this singular focus, that's what pushes people. And that's what we were going back to in the beginning, that the lone wolf nature, where again, he's charismatic and has the skills enough to accumulate the allies. He just doesn't hold on to them, or he doesn't utilize them, I think, in a proper enough fashion to really alleviate. And it's about efficiency. And we'll get into that a little bit when we discuss treatment and then later on in the skit. So let's take a quick break. And then we come back, we'll get into treatment.
Greetings and salutations. This is Cage's Kiss, the ultimate Cage cast, where we discuss the movies and life of the national treasure, Nick Cage.
There are 3 of us here, and I can't help but notice that none of us are Nicolas Cage. Did nobody call him?
What? A Cage cast with no Nick Cage?
No, instead of being Nicolas Cage, we're 3 Nicolas Cage experts, which is the next best thing.
I don't think we should admit to being experts.
Too late.
We are not experts at anything. We are not life coaches, and we are not in any way, shape, or form qualified to give you suggestions on life choices.
But Nick Cage is, and he's made hundreds of life choices.
Seriously, I cannot stress enough just how much you should not take our advice.
But we're experts.
No, seriously, we're not experts.
Yes, but we will be reviewing his first acting gig as Nicholas Coppola, Best of Times, which features a young and very precious Crispin Glover.
And his work in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
And his work in My Nightmares.
We're experts.
What is the perfect package? Well, it could be anything. Join Chad and Dave as they dive into the Perfect Package podcast. From the perfect first date to the perfect Old West gang.
I knew it was coming. I was like, where's my Hateful Eight pick from him?
Damn right. Of course it's going to be in there.
Each episode, Chad and Dave get 5 picks to create the perfect package. Then, it's up to the listeners to decide who will win each episode of the Perfect Package podcast. So get ready to explore everything from road trips to bank heists.
All right, I felt like running
dark.
Yeah, because I thought this was a normal heist. We might be breaking into like a hospital to steal our heart right now.
The Perfect Package podcast is full of laughs, some healthy competition, and a side of interesting tidbits. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back, so let's focus on in treatment. So what would you say to Clint?
To be honest, I'm not sure there has to be an in-universe versus out-of-universe thing for this one. The way he's dealing with things, it's real enough. I don't think.
Well, and I think, not to like sidetrack, but that's one of the things that makes this such a fantastic run is he's written in such a human way, and powers or not, I think it certainly helps that he's, he doesn't have any superpowers, but he's written in such a human way that we can all relate to Clint in some fashion or another.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you say to Clint or someone exactly like Clint,
right.
If you want to merge it? Right. We have done that on 1 or 2 other episodes where we've merged the in-universe and out-of-universe.
Yeah. This is a situation where I know I have just said you don't keep a score sheet when it comes to your interactions with people. I'm not saying keep a score sheet, but I am saying it's a good idea to have a journal or a log, because someone like Clint at this point has developed things so innate to his pattern of responses to people and his responses to certain situations that the only way to break it is to allow him to have the realization and have it outside of himself. His friends saying things doesn't help, or family or whoever. That's been well established. So this is ideal for therapy because you've already established that the people around you that are close to you and want to help you aren't getting through. So how's another human being, a therapist, going to get through? Well, I don't need to create the data. You need to create the data for yourself. Because someone like Clint, when he develops his plans, wants to make sure that it makes sense to him. It doesn't matter if it makes sense to me. I can yell till I'm blue in the face, dude, just let your team help you. It's going to be irrelevant. So I would start off just by saying, when was the last time you were able to send a thank you note to someone? Because that's a little less off-putting. You want to do something for someone else. Sending someone a thank you note is one of the most gracious things you can do in life. I don't care if it's an email, a text, whatever. When's the last time you actually did that? And I have a feeling he would say, oh man, that's been a long time. Like, well, why is that? That seems like the type of thing you would love to do. You seem the type of person that's very gracious and generous. How did you end up not doing that? And just trying to find some parts of dissonance with why his attempts at going alone are actually more selfish than he realizes. If I could create scenarios where he knows that it's a situation that's not in his wheelhouse, that he doesn't know enough about, so he would have to research. Because often people that think that they can do everything by themselves know that they have to at least prepare to do something by themselves. Although in the comic, Clint kind of does some things a bit by the skin of his teeth, but still. What are you going to research? Who are you going to reach out to? Who's going to be your mentor? Who's your teacher? And if the person can't give an answer, like, oh, wow, I'm not sure if I'd be comfortable handling that. Could you get back to me on that? Can you find someone in your Rolodex? Oh boy, now I'm sounding old. Can you find someone in your list of contacts that may be able to provide more information? I would tend to avoid using the direct word help, although I'm sure it would come up more than one time, because that can be a trigger word for someone that is trying to be as independent as possible and trying to live up to what they think is an important position that is beyond their capabilities. I would say it's more, how do we as a team come up with the result that you can be proud of? Because getting to the bottom line of whatever it is that you saw happening and you wanted to make sure it was done in a way that suits your style is fantastic. And the idea that you could somehow develop a skill that you may not realize you had or didn't have to incorporate other people and delegating it so that your vision comes to plan. Now I'm playing off the narcissism that may be involved without sounding like I'm insulting you. Like, moron, you really should have just let this other expert do it because they're way better at this than you. It's not even a matter of saying or providing this, different information. It's just all about the wording of it with someone like this. And once again, this is Hair Club for Men. I'm not only the president, I'm also a client.
Well said.
It's amazing how the people around me have learned how to say certain things that kick something off in me one way compared to if it's said a different way, I just totally tune it out and I just like veg and not do a thing.
Preach.
So anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, the point is, with someone like Clint, we're not talking about being completely broken, despondent, and not able to function. We're talking about functioning at a point where you're getting things done, but it's not at the level you want it to be, and it could be better, but at the same time, you don't want to inconvenience the people around you because you think that they're going to get some sort of resentment towards you asking for their help. Man, oh man, this is getting really to the heart of things, where ultimately the best thing might be what I call a cold call. Someone that you haven't reached out to in a long time, quote unquote, your friend or your associate or your whoever, if it's professional, if it's personal, whatever. And just saying, I know I haven't spoken to you in a long time, but I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate you for who you are. And if there's anything I could do for you in the future, just let me know. Why do that? Because it's not just acknowledging that you can put yourself in an uncomfortable situation with someone that at the moment doesn't need you and you don't need them. It's creating the opportunity for an environment that will foster the type of relationship that's much more mutual. Because what Clint is used to doing is putting himself out there saying, hey, I'm this super helpful guy and you seem really cool. I can hang out with you for now. And if there comes a time where I'm going to need your help, it's okay because I'll just go away and you can do your own thing. That sounds like it would be good for the other person, but it actually creates way more anxiety because they're saying, you're waffling, you're flaking. What are you doing here? We need some reciprocity. So creating that with a distant enough potential relationship, it may not go anywhere. This person may say, yeah, I haven't heard from you in 3 years, buzz off. Cool. You now learn how do you handle a situation where someone actually does not want your help. We can talk through that. If the person says, oh man, you know what's funny? I was going to call you like a month ago or something, but I just never got around to it. Really? Now we have the opportunity to discuss new encounters that are going to come across because your personality allows for it. So any dynamic that comes up spontaneously because you took the first step, that starts shutting down that lone wolf. All of a sudden, all of those other social cues that were previously broken off, they could be manifested with people that are considered non-threatening because it's true. In a way, if you haven't had that much contact with those people, there is a huge chance that it's not going to go any farther, but you get to experiment. You get to do things where, hey, even if you fall flat on your face, not as much harm. And that's okay. And doing it with the instruction of someone who's a therapist and just making observations as opposed to grading it, because that's often what people that are put in these guilt-ridden situations where they have a certain level of power, they feel like they're always being judged. It becomes former Mayor Ed Koch. How am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? You don't want them to do that. You want them to be objective. You want them to be able to judge themselves, not too harshly, so that they don't go back into the shell, but be able to take criticism and grow from it. So I think that's something that a lot of people could use in their lives. I know that's something that I can use in my life. And I actually do reach out and try and have people do that for me because I know that's how vital it is. So, Clint, you're a great guy. You're doing a lot of good things. Let's just fine tune it a bit and let's get you the proper support around you so that you don't burn yourself out, dude.
Well, I think we just found our call to action for this episode is everybody, I think, should do that cold call that you just described. Reach out to somebody, make that cold call, offer the assistance, and then be willing to accept, and this is the big part, be willing to accept whatever the consequences of that thing are, whether they tell you to buzz off or they say, hey, I actually do need your help because now you made the ask. You can't waffle on it now. Otherwise, you're really a jerk. So that's our call to action for this week.
I'll give one caveat, and that is don't do this with someone where the bridge is burnt. In other words, if someone directly harmed you, or unfortunately, if there was a result of someone being harmed by your actions, those may not be the ideal people. I understand, if you're with the Adele song, hello, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about making amends with your worst enemy or anything of the sort. I'm talking about acquaintances where things may have gotten better or simply because of distance or circumstances, things have drifted. That's all. Just the very gray zone that everyone hates. If you can find a way to bridge that, not the flames, not the complete fire and brimstone, just the gray areas.
Yeah, those folks that you met a couple of times, maybe your Facebook friends, but you're not really super close with them. Reach out, let one of them know you're willing to do something, you're willing to care, and I'm sure they'll appreciate it. I mean, they may not, but at the very least, you can feel good knowing that you made that ask. So that's our call to action for this week. And now let's take all of this and see what happens when we get Clint Barton on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Mr. Barton. I'm Dr. Issues.
Bless you.
I'm sorry?
Didn't you sneeze?
No, I said my name is Dr. Issues.
Oh, sorry. The hearing aid must not have caught it.
I can speak up if you like.
No, that's fine. I can read lips.
You know, you look a lot like Danny Rand.
God, I'm tired of hearing that.
Sorry. So, how are you doing?
I'm really futzing tired.
Why are you tired?
Oh, where do I begin? The Russian mob, the tenants of my building, my ex-wife, my current girlfriend, the woman I cheated on my girlfriend with, my dog, Kate, my brother.
Okay. Sounds like you have a lot on your plate. It can be overwhelming to try and tackle everything all at once. So do one thing at a time and eventually it'll all get done. After all, as the expression goes, how do you eat an elephant?
With a really thick knife.
What? No, that's not it. It's one bite at a time.
You're still going to need a really thick knife.
Anyway, what's the first thing you want to get done? What's your top priority?
Figuring out how to untangle and hook up my entertainment system.
Really? That's your priority? You mentioned several relationship issues, a potential family dispute, the Russian mob. You're concerned about TV?
I need to catch up on my DVR. I still haven't seen the season finale of Dog Cops.
Mr. Barton, I can't help you if you're not going to take this seriously.
I am serious. You know how hard it is to avoid spoilers in this day and age?
All right, that does it. If you're not prepared to actually...
All right, I get it. Open up, be honest, yada, yada, yada.
I'm still not feeling a ton of sincerity from you.
Because what difference does it make how I feel?
It makes all the difference in the world.
But I still get it done. I mean, isn't that what matters?
I applaud your consideration for results, but if we work together, I can make you more efficient. Think of it this way. Wouldn't you rather have a bow with a string that's easier to pull back?
Not necessarily. See, now a bow that's easier to pull back doesn't have as much power, which means any arrow fired from it is going to have the desired force and speed. So...
oh, boy. I should have known better than to attempt an archery analogy. Okay, let's try this again. Wouldn't you rather spend your focus and energy on the things that matter? Like, I feel like you think you're surrounded by nonsense, but you refuse to delegate anything or prioritize what's really important. So instead of getting it done efficiently, you run yourself into the ground hoping some of the things will either resolve themselves or you'll luck into getting two things accomplished simultaneously.
It's just... I've always just gotten it done. I mean, yeah, occasionally I get help with the Avengers, Kate, Bobby, Natasha, Jessica, but then they leave and the problems are still there. So it's just easier to do it myself. And if help comes along, then that's great. But I don't need anyone to help me. I mean, unless it's wiring the entertainment system. I mean, I called Tony and he offered to just buy me new stuff, but it's my stuff. You get it?
Okay, I get it. So, well, anyway, you acknowledge that others can help you. Now, how do we go about getting you to actually ask for that help? I mean, you're here after all, and you haven't left yet.
Well, I'm here because if I go back home, I'm faced with all the stuff that I haven't finished yet. At least here, there aren't many reminders of all the garbage in my life.
Who could that be? I don't have another session scheduled for...
Open door, bro.
Oh, you gotta be futzing kidding me.
Bro, we come find you. Come out so we can talk, bro.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to come back another time. This is a private session.
Bro, this not about you. This about other bro.
Do you know how to identify people by anything other than bro?
Sadly, no, they don't. Listen, you tracksuit Draculas. I'm giving you to the count of 3 to leave here with all your limbs functional.
Mr. Barton, I'd ask you to please take this fight elsewhere.
Bro, you come out or we come in and shoot up Dr. Bro's office. You tell us what a ginger...
Vulgar anatomical epithet.
...is, bro, or I take fingers. I give you to count of 3, bro. 1.
Don't worry, Doc. I got this.
I don't share your enthusiasm, Mr. Barton, and I'm going to be asking you to contribute to the premium.
Oh, come on, Doc. I don't have that kind of scratch.
2, bro.
Please, just step outside and leave this office unharmed. I can't afford another increase. I'm sure you can handle them.
Can you at least open the door before you start shooting? My doctor friend here is concerned about his insurance.
Bro, come out and Dr. Bro office have no holes. She not worth it, bro. 3, bro.
Oh, Lord!
Okay, this looks bad. Ow! Bro, shoot him! Crap. Where's the explosive arrow?
Explosive arrow? Mr. Barton, I implore you!
Sorry, Doc. It's this or more bullet holes. Ha! Explosive arrow. Damn it, mislabeled again. Remind me to yell at Kate when we get out of here.
If we get out of here.
Bro, not looking so good for you, bro. Pretty sure this is it. Breathe. Notch. Let it fly. You should have walked away, bro. Bro, you win this time. But we come back. And now your doctor bro will get it too. Great, now another building I need to watch over.
I'm serious. I'm going to have to ask you to contribute to this month's premium.
Yeah, sure. Here's 6 yards. Let me know if you need more.
Thanks. How do you have this much cash laying around?
My brother didn't get all of it.
Well, I'd say we can discuss this next session, but I think it's going to be a while before the contractors come and clean this mess up.
Actually, I want to do this again next week. Why don't you come to my apartment? We'll grill some dogs on the roof and we can talk some more.
That's unusual. Are you sure?
Yeah, it's fine. Everyone else drops in and at least I have a better handle on security there.
Well, that sounds nice for a change. I think I'll take you up on that, Hawkeye.
Hawkeye.
Yeah, that's what I said, Hawkeye. You're Hawkeye.
Did you know grills?
Who?
Never mind. Unbefutzingleavable. See you next week, Doc.
See, this is the problem with not owning your own building. Between the triple net lease and then, the insurance itself, it just ruins any cash flow.
You got to find a new office. You got to find a new building that you own.
Yeah, easier said than done. I don't have Clint's money. Well, I have a little bit now, but that's barely going to make a dent.
Well, see if, you can maybe talk to Tony. I'm sure Tony would be willing to help loan you some money.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to owe Tony any money.
Yeah, that's true. Well, hey, I mean, if you owe Tony money, is he really going to even notice it's gone?
Knowing him, yes. Yes, he will.
Okay.
Down to the penny. Yes.
Fair point. All right. I stand corrected. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much, Ruby. It was a fantastic suggestion. Like, as I said at the beginning, any opportunity to read the Matt Fraction run of Hawkeye is a good one. So I urge you all to go out, find it on Comixology, Marvel Unlimited, Amazon, wherever it is that you find and read and acquire your comics legally. I will say, I want to throw in that caveat. We're not advocating torrents or anything illegal.
Nope.
Not anymore anymore. I just mean for me personally. No. I used to read some CBZ files, but not anymore. So our next episodes, patron Ariel has requested Roy Harper. And also, since this episode is coming out on Wednesday, tomorrow starts New York Comic-Con, which I am very excited about. My wife and I will be there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so I will be posting on social media. If you find me on the floor at New York Comic-Con, and I will identify like what I'm wearing. And I know my wife and I are going to cosplay at least one day. So if you find me on the floor, I will give you some Capes on the Couch swag. So shout us out on social media if you folks are going to be attending New York Comic-Con. It's a fantastic event. I've gone, I think this is like my 8th year in a row now, 8th or 9th year in a row going. It's absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to getting some autographs and maybe some artwork done. And if you come on Thursday, you guys get to meet Theo because we are bringing him and he is going to be dressed up in a costume. That's my wife's suggestion, not mine. But the more important thing about New York Comic-Con is that I will be getting interviews with creators. I have a lengthy list of creators and characters that I want to ask them about. And having said that, I don't know who I'm actually going to be able to talk to and which characters we're going to be able to talk about. So it's kind of hard for me to say, okay, and the next episode is going to be about so-and-so. Like I know we're going to be doing Roy Harper, but other than that, the next episode or two is going to be compiled of interviews that I get with creators at New York Comic-Con. I know for a fact Erica Schultz is going to be there, so we've spoken to her, and I'm gonna meet her face to face. Again, I know Jeremy Whitley is going to be there, so I'm looking forward to meeting him and maybe getting to talk to him a little bit about Future Foundation. I know, again, there are Charles Soule is going to be there. Mm-hmm. I would love to pick his brain. And so there are dozens of writers and characters that I would love to discuss at New York Comic-Con. So we shall see. But as I said, check Twitter and Instagram. I will be posting on social media and Facebook as well. So check us out. We are at Capes on the Couch on all of those social media. media platforms. Last but not least, our listener survey is still up, and that post is going to be it's linked in the show notes. We've got some great feedback as the responses continue to roll in. We're probably going to keep that open until the end of October. So if you're listening to this live or, in a week or so, you have basically until Halloween to get your comments in on the listener survey, because that is going to help us build a better show. Last but not least, at some point in late October, early November, we will be having that live appearance at Rogue Comics in Cranford, New Jersey. Unfortunately, it's a situation where we need a Wednesday night that works for myself, Doc, and Pete, the owner, and just trying to coordinate the schedules is not an easy thing. So we are still diligently trying, but you will get an opportunity at some point to come out and meet Doc and myself and ask some questions. Last but not least, I would say if you're listening to us on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please do so. And we'll make sure that we read a 5-star review in our next episode, whether that's the Roy Harper one or the New York Comic Con interview one. So Doc, anything you want to add before we leave?
Just wanted to say thank you to everyone that was willing to listen to me admit something that's flawed about myself. But then again, that's the whole point of this, right?
Absolutely. We're all flawed. We're all trying to get better. That's the point of it. And that's why we have the show. And that's why we hope you continue to listen to the show. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.